name is Gene Quinn. Thank you for joining us here today. We have a conversation. We're going to talk about AI and streamlining prosecution and reducing timelines. We're going to get started here momentarily. We'll just get those folks who are in the waiting room an opportunity to get in. Make sure your volume is adjusted properly. And so our numbers are growing. So we could probably get started here now. I'm sure we'll get more people to join us, but welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us here today. My name is Gene Quinn. We're going to have a conversation about an integrated approach to streamlining patent prosecution and reducing timelines. We have a lot to cover today. We have, I think, a dense webinar here, not dense in a bad way, but we're going to cover an awful lot of ground. Obviously, during their conversation, if at any point in time you guys have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A box. We'll be monitoring that. And then Renee and her team will be monitoring the chat box. If you need any assistance, or if you would just like to chat with other attendees on the line, please look at the chat box for that. But if you have a question for us, make sure to put it in the Q&A box, because sometimes the chat gets awful busy and we might miss something there. So thank you again for joining us. I'm going to kick it over to Renee to introduce our speakers. Renee.
Thanks, Gene. Today on our panel, we have John Lawrence. He's of counsel at Cole, Freeman & Mellon. With engineering roots in broadcast and post-production technology, he brings hands-on technical experience to his extensive work developing patent portfolios across software, AI, communications, semiconductors, medical devices, and more. He also handles trademarks worldwide and advises clients on monetizing their IP assets. Next, we have Samir Rayani. He's the CEO of IP Author. With a strong background in technology leadership and executive roles across multiple software-driven companies, he has guided IP Author through significant growth while shaping advanced solutions for law firms and corporate IP teams. His vision sits at the intersection of innovation, technology, and practical IP needs. Next, we have Sumer Reyes. He is a seasoned solution architect at IP Author with over 8 years of experience in delivering innovative patent solutions to clients in Europe and Asia. An inventor with patents in the medical devices sector, he combines his technical expertise with a deep understanding of the patent lifecycle. He holds a bachelor's degree in pharmacy and an MBA. And finally, we have our moderator, Gene Quinn. He's a patent attorney and a longtime thought leader in the IP world. He launched IPWatchdog in 1999, which has grown into one of the most trusted voices in patent law and innovation policy. Gene is widely recognized for his expertise in software patentability and U.S. patent procedure, and he's been repeatedly honored as one of the top influencers and strategists in the global IP community. In addition, we also have Sandeep Mandava, who's the Vice President of Business Development at IP Author, who will be available throughout the entire webinar to answer any questions asked in the chat box. So if you have any questions specifically for IP Author, you can put that in the chat box as well, and he'll be happy to answer it. Back to you, Gene.
Great. Thanks a lot, Renee. I like how you said I'm an IP influencer. I think that may be the first time you've ever put it in quite those terms, but that sounds pretty cool. I'm happy to own that one. So thank you again for joining us. Again, we have an awful lot to cover. So let's just get right into it. I think, well, I've got a poll question up here right now. I suppose first order of business would be to end this poll question, then to share the results, just so the panel knows who it is that we're talking to. And maybe not surprisingly, most of the people here are not using an integrated workflow. And since that's one of the things we specifically decided to focus on here today, that probably is not shocking. Most of the other, well, even across the board for the others, more or less, some not using anything at all, some using isolated tasks, some using multiple tools. So give us an idea. Thank you for taking the time to do that poll. Let me kick it over to Samir, and he has some slides he's going to go through, and we'll go from there. Again, any questions, please put it in the Q&A box. Samir.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Gene. Very excited to be here. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, IPWatchdog, for having us. It's an amazing platform, and we love sharing the latest, greatest thoughts and questions and ideas that we have here on this platform. So this today's topic comes to us from one of our power users, John Lawrence, who is also on the panel today. And he will be giving you his perspective and insights very shortly. But I'll just set the stage here. What's going on in the world of AI in IP? Well, first of all, pretty much everybody is now using AI. Today, we are not going to talk about, hey, you should use AI and AI is a good tool, etc. None of that. AI is useful, like it, hate it, whatever, you're going to have to use it. So we are all using AI. It's clear from the polls also that more or less most of us are. But then the question is, how are we using AI today? And what is the best way to use AI, right? And that is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about two aspects. Obviously, this is a very big question, but we're going to break it down into two major aspects. On the patent preparation side, right? If you use the tools correctly, what are the benefits you can get? Similarly, on the prosecution side, on responding to office actions, for example, what is the best practice? How should you use it? How should you use the tools? And we are going to talk about it primarily from the perspective of the platform that we have built, which is called IP Author. One of the strengths of the platform is that it's fully integrated. We have patent search, drafting, office action response, and many other capabilities all integrated into one platform. They all talk to each other. All these tools are tightly connected. So we're going to talk about how this connectivity, how this integration matters, A, and B, we're going to talk about how much effort has gone on under the hood to make this technology work really, really effectively for you, right? And that's what you will see here. You will hear from John his personal experiences of how this helps in his practice, and we're going to be happy to answer your questions and take your feedback here. So I'll turn it over to my colleague Sumer. Sumer is going to kick us off with some of the capabilities that we have been developing on the drafting and search side, and he'll be discussing with John how those capabilities are utilized in the practice of patent drafting and prosecution. So over to you, Sumer.
Thank you. Thank you, Samir, for the kind introduction. And thank you, IP Watchdog. So, John, we've been discussing, over the course of many months about some of the gaps you feel that they were earlier in the use of AI tools, or generally without the use of AI tools. There are people who are using these tools in silo. I may have a patent search tool, or I use it often, but I do not know, or there isn't a correct way for me to collate the results, and so on and so forth. So my first thought when we were discussing all these things were, what are some of the pain points that you have had identified that you have now solved in terms of avoiding any, let's say, delays, or making sure that the prosecution overall runs quickly and without any hurdles. Are there identified issues that have been solved from you? Would you want to care to talk about some of these issues? I think you already discussed some of them with us, and we've jotted down a few. Maybe if you could help us, expand into them.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure. Yes. Well, I mean, we all, as practitioners, have run into situations that could be more efficient. And I think that, as an example, we all use AI. We all have tools. IP Author is an integrated tool. But my point was whether or not each of the individual silos of those tools effectively work with each other. And as an example here, I think we're going to show how we IP Author has amended the application such that the search tool works more effectively with the drafting tool, where the drafting tool will look at the search, will use that search and not just provide the search results, but use those search results in helping draft a disclosure, update disclosure as things change, ask questions to help develop that disclosure, invent the questions, and then also on that side of the drafting, provide some sort of insight based upon prompts about things like 101, 102 maybe, and maybe 103, but allow you to go back and forth with somebody else, someone that's giving you feedback as to probably to give you the support, to give you the tools, and maybe give you the ammunition that you need during prosecution to get over those types of rejections without guessing, without doing it in isolation, without doing it just upon your work. Now you have somebody looking at this, looking at prior art, looking at evaluating your draft and giving you feedback. And I think that's and amending the claims accordingly based upon your input as well, obviously. But giving you that feedback, that loop is I think very effective. And that's I think the first part we're going to show here.
Perfect. So the first point you mentioned, I think we've been discussing this over the course of many weeks in the past, is also about right scoping, right? We could go to that part, which is on the next slide, is about using AI in shapes and forms that can help you when you're introducing your invention before actually even creating a search to right scope the invention itself. Take into consideration, can AI help us? How can AI help us disclose the best form of this invention to make sure that we have correctly defined the enablement of our solution. We have taken into account high quality embodiments. Some oftentimes they are not present in the first draft that you get, and again, due to the paucity of the time, things can get pushed forward, and you go into the prosecution and realize there was probably a gap. That's the first point we're going to discuss today as well, which is how do you use AI? How do you integrate into the whole workflow of searching, drafting, and then prosecution of right scoping the invention as well. We'll see that in the demo. The second problem, which is there on the second on the corresponding slide, is you mentioned about searching, and then integration of such a search results into your drafting. That's a very good point. And while people, as I said earlier, as well, have search tools, or they look at sometimes the search, but the way the scope of the invention that you use finally for drafting is defined oftentimes lacks the actual link between the search results and then the drafting. So what we are going to show today is how in our search platform on IP Author, you could use the mapping of various invention elements from your invention and then mapping them with the prior art and then looking at these results with same lenses. So you look at each of the first, second, third, fourth document to the extent to the 50th document as well with the same lenses, because we are performing an element-wise analysis. That helps you, first of all, quickly understand the novelty question. It helps you also understand how somebody may have a motivation of combining maybe the first and the seventh document in such a way that it could potentially be looked at as an inventive step problem, because you're looking at all this information from the same elements wise. This integration or this motivation to combine becomes easy for you to predict, right? And then use the right or the contextually relevant documents that you feel are very close to what you are on which you are building upon into your relevant drafting bit. That's the second part we'll learn. The third part we'll learn is, can we anticipate some objections? Right? Is there a way for me to interact with the tool so that I make sure before I go to the patent office? Of course, as a patent attorney, I know what to avoid, but there often are terms that sometimes can get I know, for the lack of a better word, misunderstood for abstract ideas or mental makeup of things, right? How can you use AI in the current flow of drafting itself to anticipate some of these problems. That's what I'll show. At this point in time, I'll share my screen and we'll look at this whole stuff live on the platform. Right, so I'm sharing a web browser. I've uploaded my invention here. My invention actually is it's a computer implemented invention and has some corresponding hardwares that detect pedestrians' intent using some camera. And it uses machine learning to classify actions and therefore predict whether the pedestrian would enter into the vehicle's path in a certain time frame. Right? This is my invention. Now, when I upload this invention, the first point is obviously there are aspects of the invention already defined, but the point is here to take an objective look without, not from the look of a patent attorney who's drafting it. Of course, they will take a look, but also from the perspective of somebody who's looking at it for the first time and then trying to understand whether there are ways to better this invention disclosure itself. What questions should patent attorney ask the inventors to make sure that the disclosures are well and tight, right? So the first question IP author throws at me is, hey, I want to understand that with these several software modules, including hybrid neural network, are there any to make sure that we have the airtight claims? Can you give me a little more detail on the specific inputs and the outputs and how the internal logic of these modules work? For example, you mentioned there is an intent recognition module. Now, this is a classical example of enablement. You want to make sure that you're not using magic word salad, but you're actually showing how the algorithm is interacting with the hardware to see what is the input, what did it do, and what was the final output. That's exactly what this question is asking. To make sure also you don't have problems around 101 as well, to make sure what is it that you're doing and for what purpose are you doing it. That's the question what it is aimed at. Second question, to make sure that you want to increase the scope of your disclosure. It says you're using CNN and RNN hybrid models. What if there could be other models that would do the same for you? Do you have you thought of such other things? For example, using transformers or different other feature extraction ways. So now you're increasing the scope of what you were doing earlier with CNN and RNN and opening it up to newer other models. Then, of course, the third question, which is to show if you've conducted some tests, what were the results, what was the performance, and such. Again, to make sure that your disclosure that you're going to with to the patent office can define how what you are doing in terms of the way these elements work, provide a much better effect of working the way you want them to work. You can also make sure to overcome the 103 kind of objections as well by showing that the way I combine these elements, the performance is 1 for 1 + 1 is more than 2, stuff like that. So combining answers in this form would help your invention disclosure to create a patent scope which is much more airtight in terms of enablement, the scope, and also make sure that there aren't problems around objections with 103 as well. So at this point in time, we'll move forward, talk about aspect number 2, which is the search itself, right? Which is the search itself. So as I said, so it's not only about looking at search in terms of what are the results, I need to read them and so on and so forth. What the tool should do, and IP author does that, is that it looks at the question you've asked about these are the elements I work with and how do they create a technical effect. You define that, and the tool looks at it from that angle. It looks at these elements and then shows you what elements here actually that you have also used are disclosed in the prior art, and how does your invention with respect to each prior art differ with respect to these elements, right? And then, of course, you can, because these elements are common, you can also understand if somebody may have a motivation to combine some of these results because everything is looked at from the same angle, right? So that you know that some of the elements are not present in one, but the same element is present in some shape or form in the third one. And would somebody have a motivation, and how do I react to that? Right? That's number 2 point. To really understand whether there is novelty, whether I could anticipate some sort of objections around inventive step as well.
Let me stop you 1 second, Samir.
Sure,
if you go back to your first tab, yes. So just show, if you click on one here, you will see that you have a space to enter your answer. So imagine in the process now, we've gone back to the inventors, we fill in this information, and now what Samir has done that, and now the search will take this into account, is the point I'm trying to make. So now that we started here, we augmented this with more information based upon some evaluation and further feedback from the inventor. Now we do the search. The search is taking this into account. We might go back and forth. We might add another question. We might add some more answers, and we might go back and do the search. So now we have a little feedback loop here between additional information, additional disclosure, and the search that's run after that.
Beautiful. Yes. Perfect. Yeah. Or you could also incorporate all of this information into the actual disclosure, and then have the tool ask you further more questions. That feedback loop.
I want to make sure that we understand, that the practitioners understand the loop, right?
Perfect.
We have an effective way now for somebody to ask me some questions. You know what? That's not a bad idea. Let's get some more specificity on this, and search on that as well automatically.
Beautiful. Perfect. Right. And the next step we talked about is to select some of these documents that would be contextually relevant, as I said, for my next step, which is to define them in my drafting bit. So I copy some of this information, I go to my tab, and I define them. I say, okay, I have some known prior art here. This is the document. This is what it does. Here are the differences. The document also talks about these aspects here, and these are 2 documents I have chosen, right? I use them, and then again, going back to John's point, once I enter this, I ask the system then to analyze this input, and the system will ask me a certain different set of questions. Because now you've incorporated the feedback from the search, you're adjusting the scope. Therefore, the question you get are different. You can proceed with answering or not if you feel they're not super relevant. And then from that, what percolates is the problem and the solution. Now, the problem and the solution for that work, piece of work of the invention that you are working at, with which you'll create claims, comes out, right? And you can also see.
Can you show us, Samir, go back to the search, show us how you selected the references you thought were important that should be taken into account?
Very simple. I just copy the information here and I paste them. I know why you're asking this question, is that is all of this relevant for me? You could choose really what you want out of it, and then paste only the aspect you feel is most important for you to disclose. So you don't have to take all the similarity points. You don't have to take this difference point, or you could have taken just only the relevant text part as well. So all of this is just very simple, as if you're working on traditional tools like Word documents and such. So it looks very user-friendly, but it is actually also indeed user-friendly to copy and paste, go back and forth, and get input in based on your feedback, right? Once you do that, the system is going to adapt itself, or adapt the scope of the invention itself, and then you will see that it creates a solution here, and then gives you a novelty statement, which would have already taken into account it will only take into account the prior art. It says here, okay, take into account the prior art. We are now this is the prior art that's known, does not teach suggest the combination of pulsed SRO and the detection mechanism, this unique combination, which we are doing, which is the startup time measurement or envelope growth rate, and integrated isolation amplifier is something that we are different in against the known technology in this area. Therefore, the combination of these two aspects renders us non-obvious, so we have more room to work with, right? Or additionally, there could be ways when you've already drafted your claim. You drafted your claim, and you've talked to the inventor, they come up with some more information. And John is like, hey, what do I do now? I've already drafted some of the claims. You can go back and find that application or find that technology piece, and then say, okay, I have now known another piece of art that I've just come to know. This was my scope before this. Now I use this language with the tool. I call it prompt, but it's not really a prompt. It's just a conversation. I say, hey, I have some known prior art. This is how I am as against this prior art. How do I make a better claim out of it, right? And I, voila, it changes it itself, right? And you can see it's so it would use a slightly different terminologies, emphasize on the startup time here in the preamble and in the corresponding parts of the document to make sure that I am actually in the green, right? So that's how you use known information that you earlier had, but you were not able to correctly, incorporate or integrate into your drafting module, and you are able to do that. Right? That's the part number 2. Then the last part I want to talk about is anticipating some rejections. And we talk about 101. I've drafted the whole application, right? I've drafted the whole application. I want to take a check. I want to take a check and then say, hey, is there a way for me to understand whether there are terms here or any aspects or any claims that may have a problem, for the lack of a better word, a problem when it comes to the examination. So what I do is I use IP Author again. I say, hey, I wanted to analyze this input, this rejection, this description, and then see if I could end up in this zone where examiner may ask me certain questions. And it will read this information and then give us a very well-defined framework, which is the prevailing framework of Alice and Mayo, and then say, hey, the risk of sustainable patent eligibility is low in your case. And it explains this in more detail, says, hey, what you have done well is that you're not directing yourself to an abstract idea. Your potential argument to that is that you're collecting and controlling, and you're very well defining really what that finally means. Similarly, this is how you would actually analyze this part. Similarly, another point about not being an abstract idea, step 1, is that claim 11, which is obviously tied to an operation of a particular machine, which is a super generative receiver with an isolation preamplifier and a quench generator. In this case, you are able to define really what I'm, what is the result into. And the step 2 of the inventive concept also define here very well for you. And it gives you a summary that, okay, you are in the green, right? But of course, let's also, I want to show you another example when I had another application that I drafted, and I want to, again, do the same test. I want to understand whether for this application there would be problems with respect to 101, right? So I asked the same question for this application as well, and voila, it came back and said, actually, for this application, there is some questions that examiner may come up with. For example, we talked about improvements to the technical field, right? It said if you go into the paragraphs number 2 and 40, the invention provides a specific solution to the technical problem of reactive detection only systems, right? So, and why is that a problem? Because you're talking about data combination which is unconventional. Now, what does it really mean? What does it all mean? So you have to first of all make sure that the interaction is with the physical system, right? Is define that. For example, in the first claim, add sensor input layer. But what I did is that I said, okay, this is all fine. This is very difficult for me to follow. Can you actually give me a much open prescriptive form of your proposal? How do you propose to remediate it? It's not just pointing the problems out. It went ahead and then did it for me. It said, let's propose the changes to our claims. The first thing you're going to do is that you're going to refine the independent claim preamble and the final steps. How? This is your current preamble. It's a computer implemented method for predicting pedestrian intent to enhance vehicle safety. What I propose is that you say the computer implemented method for proactively controlling, again, tying to a physical hardware, controlling a vehicle system, the method comprises something. And then similarly, it talks about the final step changes as well. It does the same for my method claim right here. And it then proposes changes for the specifications. Add explicit technical problem and a solution. It proposes these paragraphs here. It says after the paragraph 5, I'm going to ask you to add 5a, where you talk about this aspect. And then I'm going to ask you to also add some unconventional data of nature of data fusion. Propose additions within the paragraph 42, add the fusion right here in this language. And that's really what is possible today. You know this information, but AI and IP author in this case is enabling using all the known information that you have in different shapes and forms into a tool, a platform that can actually that you can run alongside from the whole preparation process, starting with the invention, disclosure, bettering it, creating search, using the information pre and post search to create better claims, using the claims to create disclosure, using questions like these to create problem-free disclosures for patent office to be filed. That's what I wanted to talk about. Any thoughts, John, on this aspect?
No, I mean, I like this idea. Again, this is truly integrated. We have a feedback loop system that's has an overall umbrella that allows you to look at your search results, make sure they're addressed in your spec, update that, update the search based upon your down the line development of the spec. When new elements come in, update the search, and to have that update the spec, then proactively go back, look at things like 101 or maybe even 102. I found the reference, instead of starting from the beginning, take a look at this, tell me what you think. And you have an umbrella. And you have a system also that starts from the beginning, is going to ask you questions. Are they going to be all the great questions? But basically you can, practitioners here, we're all educated people here, know that it's looking at, is it enabled? Is it as disclosed as much as possible? Is there, anything else I can ask for specificity to get those elements that I can use for ammunition later on? And it's decent about asking those questions, and it's constantly updating those questions and taking your answers into account, not just stopping there. I put my answer in, it's taken into account, and it's updating. It may cause more problems, but and that's the true integration, I think, from just having a search tool, which there are many search tools out there. There are many drafting tools out there. There's regular LLMs. The first step in integration is having these guys work together in some sort of loop that keeps you in the loop, obviously, as the practitioner, but gives it an easy way for you not to miss something, to fully develop something, all that in one place.
Perfect. Thank you, John. I ask Jean to take over from here, and we move forward to the rest of the webinar discussion.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Samir. And I see Samir is answering a question in the chat, but I'd like to pull him in and get his thoughts on what we were just going over here. Samir, anything to add?
No, I mean, the main thing, as John most eloquently put it, like these are the integration matters, right? Like you are all very busy, AI tools, this, that, like those are all things that you need to do your job. But at the end of the day, you're busy people and you want tools that work for you, that fit into your workflow. And that's what we're trying to build. And that's what we're trying to demonstrate here, that, we are making a tremendous effort. B, we are putting a lot of the latest, greatest technology to work under the hood so that, you don't have to worry about the nuances. I got a number of questions that, that just where, we feel very confident today that we are able to address the requirements. For example, one of the questions was, can we handle chemistry patents? And, they're a completely different beast. So we had to build a very elaborate system for supporting Marcus structures and structure and drawings and reading structures so that they can be fully understood in the case of office actions, etc. Another question was about like, hey, when a search is done, we don't want to share the search metadata with the inventors. We just want to tell them that, hey, something like this exists out there. For that reason, we have this function that we have built, which is mask download. So as you can see, there are like these real capabilities are in the platform that fit into your workflow, into your business. And that's what we are trying to build here. And that's what, the industry is heading towards. So it's pretty exciting. Those are my current thoughts. And you will see more of these examples in the next half.
Okay, great. And I launched a poll question here, which is ongoing. I suppose we could probably close it out and share the results with everybody here about the biggest bottlenecks that we see with respect to prosecution workflow. It gives you an idea of where people are. The biggest one is in manual handoffs and coordination.
Pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So
sets the stage for the next part very, very well.
yeah, that kind of tees up the next segment very, very well. So with that, Sandeep, I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you. No, thanks for walking us through the first part, and thanks for the introductions, Jean and Samir. So what I plan to focus today is, in the event you used all the tools out there, specifically IP Author and all the features, and you still submitted the office action. There are still going to be situations where an office action is unavoidable, being that the examiner found a new evidence that you didn't find, or whatever it is, or the interpretation of the examiner may be slightly off and you're trying to explain. So in those situations, our goal is to make the second part as seamless, as easy to use as possible. But before I move on and show what we as IP Author has built, I just want to quickly set the stage as to what's out there. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so what you people may have seen as you played with some of the AI tools out there is potentially AI giving you homework. And that's kind of ties into the manual hands-off coordination piece of it, where AI is asking you, okay, do you believe the element is present in the reference? Do you believe the reference is talking about this? And so on and so forth, where the attorney is feeding that information and expecting an output that they did so much work to begin with. And what we call this is the configuration trap, where you as an attorney, instead of doing the high value work where you're deciding which strategy to use, you're actually doing the data entry clerk work where you are doing all the legwork and then trying to feed the data back to the system. So these are some of the tools that are out there that kind of make you do all the work, where they give you options. Is this element present, ambiguous, not present, and why not present? And even ask questions to it to generate strategies. So heavy cognitive load. At this stage, I would switch to what we plan or what we are doing currently. So we take the bulk amount of the research work, analysis work, finding what's present, finding what not present from the attorney's plate, and where AI does everything for you without pretty much zero input from the attorney, and presents it to you where you are only selecting and choosing which you believe is aligns with your thought process and you agreeing to. Without further ado, let me quickly show you the platform. I'm trying to skim through many of this so that you get to see the important portions. So the input that we need from you is just the app number, and that's it. And we support all the different types of rejections, the 101, 102, 103, 112, also the offline as in unpublished applications too. But once you provide the application number, we go ahead and fetch the relevant information of that office action from the PTO directly. And then you don't need to, of course, find any files or upload any files. We not only look at the latest rejection that is happening for that application, but also look at every prior response and every prior rejection while we do it, taking into those into context. So once we fetch all the information, we show you what's the rejection is about, what's happening, and all the references are at your hand tips where you can click and read through them. They are integrated with our own patent database, so seamlessly open and read through them if you want to, which we don't recommend because we're already doing that for you. So you have the claims mapped to the rejection content, again, one-on-one mapped, easy to read. You have the claim document, the non-file rejection document, if at all you want it. Then the showstopper of a feature that we built where, again, without adding any cognitive load of you making the decision, we did the thorough analysis of each individual element of the claim that's part of the rejection while looking at the references that the examiner cited. And a point that John wanted me to stress is that not only looking at the examiner cited paragraphs, which as practitioners, you have a limited time window. So you are trying to make the decisions in that time window to choose the best possible outcome. But IP Author has infinite processing capability in that sense. So it's looking at every line of every cited reference and pulling all the relevant aspects of that citation and presenting it to you, and also making the decision based on the entire context of everything. So what I'm showing to you, each element and the support for each element from your patent specification, the paragraphs that examiner cited and the paragraphs that IP Author thought to be relevant from the rest of the citation or each of the citations, and then the conclusion for each element as to why it's doing it. And this conclusion is not just label, it's giving you a reason, it's giving you what is the examiner intent, and if there's any supplemental necessity to back it up or contradict, and then what's the overall conclusion for each of those elements. So it's by looking at this, you quickly already know, oh, let me take a look at this first. Let's not look at everything else. By you looking at this, oh, yeah, I agree to this, then you already know what strategy to implement, what strategy to choose, how to build the strategy. And again, we don't want you to do it. We just want you to sell it. So we already have pre-populated strategies for you, where we're saying, okay, for this rejection, this could be an optimal strategy for you to choose. In this particular example, there is eligible subject matter, and that's what the system is recommending as the top strategy to choose from. And then it, of course, have alternative strategies. If you click it, then it gives you the reasoning as to how it came to that conclusion. And I'll try to zoom it out a little so that you can read. So it's giving you the examiner position and code deficiency in that position. What's the technical significance distinction, between what examiner thought versus what you actually tried to patent, and what is the proposed action, and what's the success of the proposed action, and is the legal justification for it to propose the action. The easiest part for you is just to choose whatever you felt appropriate and have the IP Author even develop the response for you. But IP Author actually goes ahead and already builds a preliminary response for the first strategy of all the rejections and prepares this elaborate initial draft for you to export and use as your baseline as you plan to make changes.
Okay,
Another example that
Sandeep, can you go back to the strategies?
Yes.
Okay, what does the add button do?
You can actually create your own strategy if you believe that there are different strategies that you like, but you want to slightly tweak it, that there is guidance from client. You can just go ahead and tell what you believe is happening. You don't need to be as detailed. You just can tell it, and then it'll go ahead and implement.
And if I put in a strategy, it'll go back and look for support for that strategy and provide me an argument just like the other ones. Okay, so you're not tied to yours. You have suggestions, but maybe you and your client have a game plan already worked out and you want to go with that. That's all here too, but it provides you support for that as well.
Yes. And it implements that, puts the initial draft for you to use as your baseline.
Perfect. And
thank you for
happens,
highlighting it.
Can you show me the fact that you look at the full prosecution history? You know all the references, not only all the references, but you also know all of our prior amendments. Can you show me where you take that into account?
Yeah, let's just quickly find. I have an example that I pulled to showcase that one. Oh yeah, actually here. So in this particular example, it also has an allowable subject matter. But if you look at the reasoning, while the rejection of claim 1 as previously presented is maintained, the examiner has provided a clear path to allowance stating claim 6 would be allowable and so on and so forth. So what it's doing is it's looking at your previous response to an office action. What did the examiner reject it on? And what did you respond? And how did the examiner change the position in the new rejection and what is the optimal path for you to respond by taking context of each and every previous rejection into account. And it's stating it and responding to it. It even, I mean, I have seen situations where it even states that, oh, you did try to argue these two things before, so let's not go there, just argue on this point or just amend.
No, I think that's a very important point. I mean, it provides you, I mean, if you want to argue it again, but it'll provide you an idea of what you did argue, what didn't work, and then as a result, provide you perhaps an alternate path or a different way of arguing it. But it's something that we do all the time. We always have to go back and look and see where we are, remind ourselves. Here, it's doing it for you to some extent, giving you, again, you're not starting with a blank page. It's giving you some support, and you can work from there, while providing the flexibility of putting in whatever it is you want. You're not stuck to the model's suggestions.
Actually, one other fun thing that people like to do is, in addition to having an option to add, most of the times what it already pre-prepped is like 90% aligned with your intent as to how you plan to build it. But the small tweaks that you may want to do, you can just edit, go to that particular piece and say, oh, proposed action. In addition to amending, can you also take content from other claim also to amend? So keeping the same, you can just add that one statement that you think should also be considered as it builds out the strategy. So that's also possible. And a few other things that I'll just highlight quickly. Let's say in amendment, you did choose this option, but you also plan to argue. In this case, it's not recommended. But in addition to amendment, you also add strength to your argument. You can choose multiple strategies for the same rejection from what the IP author has recommended, including your own. So you can also create an argument by yourself and choose an amendment and choose your argument and have them both go together as it builds out the preliminary draft.
But just to be clear, if I pick the first one and I go in and I amend your proposed action a bit, that'll work as well.
Yes. Yes.
Again, not starting from a blank page, working with the system adapting to your needs.
Yes. I'm preloading everything for you to just quickly validate and confirm to it and then go ahead. You don't need to, again, open all the references, go back to prayer history and read through, keep everything in the context.
I need to have something to do, so I'm going to do that anyway, but it's good to have somebody else working with me.
Yes. So just to recap what we looked at, so zero friction onboarding, we just ask you for the application number and we take care of the rest. And we take the context of the entire prosecution history into account while we recommend the analysis and the actions based on the analysis. And while it does the analysis, it has, I believe, there is no other tool that even comes close to how deeply it interprets the context of all the things that's provided to it. And we had to work really hard for it to work, and also highlighting and pointing you to the pieces that are more important for you to focus on. So the interpretation is top notch. And then one of the questions that many of you have asked is, does it have the ability to bake in the SCP, as in the standard essential patterns? And Samir did respond to that question stating, we do have a collection of IEEE 3GPP multimedia, and we have a dedicated collection that continues to update. And in cases where an NPL is cited, or in cases where you want it to custom fit to a particular data set, we have ability to do that, and it hooks to that data set and tweaks its responses based on that data set as well. And that's part of the customization that we provide if you have certain data sets available. Then beyond 102, 103, I also want to stress many people like this option where it does the analysis of a 101 and recommends the options while also stating the case law, while doing the Alice test analysis, while providing you the examples that you could use from, and its recommendation as to which eligible and ineligible. So at the end, what we want you to be is, we want every user to be a senior partner, where you have a data clerk, you have a junior associate, where you have your own whole team working for you, presenting you all the information that you need to make the decision and implementing the decision. And where you are not fiddling with all the documents, you're not fiddling with any of the information, doing the pre-analysis, and then telling AI what to do, and then AI reacting to your analysis. So it's already doing that.
May I interrupt for a moment? So John,
yes.
Does this does this claim hold? Like in the sense that do these tools allow you to be in a more orchestration role today in your practice?
Yes, once they're all working together and they're working, yes, absolutely. I mean, I like the ability in the drafting part to have the search and to have that loop. That works really well too. In the drafting part, I think we're still developing that to some extent. I very much like the ability not to be locked into the suggestions, to be able to modify them and have it support my modification. And I presume the system will tell me that, if I stick something in it that's not in the disclosure at all, it might give me an idea. That's those are the kind of, and to have that support is definitely better. We're not starting from a blank page. It's giving me some place to start. I'm still going to go back and look at the references, and I'm still probably going to write a lot of it myself, but I'm going to pull some language. I'll have a place to start. I'll have an idea. I think the one-on-one thing is great, especially with the way things are evolving in one-on-one. People who practice in certain areas get one-on-ones all the time. So it's a constant something that we're constantly drafting. So to have something there to develop a baseline, to have a consistent way of responding to these in one method or another, and not just pulling from different places. I would also make the point to remind people that when you if you start from the beginning and you put in a disclosure, a semantic disclosure, and you start the search and you go there, you've got a place where everything is there. The search is there, the draft is there, all the drafts are there, your office actions are there. They're all there in the system, and you can go back and you can just keep going through this process back and back and back and forth and having the loop. And that's the key. Not only are the tools individually very, very good, they're geared towards they're trained for what us practitioners as patent attorneys are doing. It's looking at all the latest case law. It's looking at the USPTO. It's looking at what's effective one-on-one. Presumably, it's updating itself. It's all there, the individual ones. But the key is now that they're working together. The search is working with drafting. Drafting is going back to the search. One-on-one it's reviewing itself. It's giving you suggestions. It's allowing you to modify the possible responses, and it's giving you all that in one place.
Thank you, John. Please, Sandeep, I know
Yes.
you have a couple more things you want to quickly share.
So one final thought. Thanks, Samir. One final thought. So we want you to stop configuring these tools and start auditing the responses done or preloaded by the system, which IP Author has been set out to do. And we would hope that you would also get the same experience. So one thing that we did to prove that IP Author helps in doing that, we actually took a real cases that were granted. We took them and we used the first office action of those set of cases and provided the rejection to IP Author, got the suggestions. For each suggestion, then we validated with what the applicant ended up arguing. And bare minimum, at least 40% of the time, our office action attempts could be saved, and 90% of the time, the system aligned with what applicant ended up arguing. I'll quickly show you that dashboard as well. So this is the dashboard that we put together where we had like 88 cases or so, within which 24 of them we so far validated, where we provided the first office action, and these are all granted cases. And what it did recommend after reviewing the IP Author strategies is that 91% of the time, it's a hindsight alignment is what we're calling it, because it's looking back and trying to guess what could have been the response and what did the applicant actually responded to. So let's look at one or two cases in quickly. So if you look at this case, this is the prosecution history and the entire rejection content and what had happened. But if you look at the first strategy that IP Author had recommended, it recommended that amend claims 1 to 21 because this inter-element spacing, and so on. And this is AI reviewing the IP Author recommendation versus what ended up being the actual argument. It's saying it's one-on-one match and 99% alignment for this particular strategy. And then, of course, it goes ahead and even highlights which parts of the rejection or response is aligned with the recommendation that IP Author has provided. And we did a thorough analysis just to make sure for us, but we want to share this with you to add to the confidence as to how much work we are doing in the behind the scenes to make sure our claims hold true when you use it. So that's what we want to showcase to you as the final step. before we close it out. So thank you, Samir. Thanks, Jean, for the time, and thanks, John, for adding your thoughts to the whole workflow. And by the way, before we leave, I'll just present the QR code for you to use that you can use to sign in. And then any final thoughts to share, Samir?
No, thank you, John. Thank you, Sandeep and Sumer. Jean, what do you think? Like, you've been following the trends in the industry. You have your ears to the ground. How do you think things are shaping up? Your final thoughts on this topic, please.
Well, my final thoughts, and it's not surprising, I suppose, going back to the very first poll question where we saw that not a lot of people who were here today were using these integrated kind of systems yet. And I don't find that surprising at all because, like up until now, you had a bunch of tools that did this really well and it did this really well. And then but what you've seen is the industry moving towards just doing one thing very well, doing two things very well. And now they're doing 3, 4 things very well, and they're coordinating them all together so that it really is like a workflow. These are not really just one-off tools to do a certain task. They are platforms. They are where you can reside. You can go to these, and I think it's exciting for the future. And I think, like, obviously, if you haven't started using AI at all yet, you've got to, rip that Band-Aid off and start doing it. Because now with these newer platforms or however integrated systems, however you want to conceptualize them, and in my mind, they're sort of the same thing. It's going to be doing more and more for you, and you can leverage it for more and more tasks. And the information from one task can bleed right over into the next task, and so on and so forth. And if you haven't even started yet with trying to get good at prompting, you got to get off the bench and at least start. And because others are doing it, and others will do it, and we know for sure that what we see is that board of directors at corporations, management committees at firms, they all see the promise in AI, and they're pushing their people to use it more and more and more. So there's a lot of folks out there already doing this, and if you're not doing it, you are probably already at a competitive disadvantage. And it's just going to get worse from there. I mean, when I use AI myself, I see it gets better and better and better. The more you use it, it gets to know you. It gets to know what you want. And you get to know better about how to use it and how to ask it for stuff. So this is an exciting time, I think. And I think hopefully we've also, my last thought is, hopefully we've also put away this idea that AI is going to replace you. It's not going to replace you. It is going to make you much better. It's going to make you at times feel like you have superpowers, things that would have been so daunting you couldn't really even start that task. Now you can do it relatively quickly if you know what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Jean. Thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure. John, thank you for, picking this topic for sharing with the community. And we're always excited to be part of the community. Please reach out to us if you have any questions, and we'll be happy to go deeper into some of these questions and details. I know there were some questions that we couldn't quite get a handle on in the chat, but we'll be happy to address them afterwards. So please let us know. You can always email us, and you can email support@ipauthor.com if you don't remember any of our individual names.
Yeah. Well, great. Thanks a lot, guys. I think that was fascinating. I really appreciate you being here. And in the audience, thank you all for joining us here for a portion of your day. That's all we have for today, but we hope to see you soon, and we hope you'll give IP Author a try. So bye for now, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.